Welcome back. If you just joined us, we're almost at the end of the show. We're now talking to our Woman Crush Wednesday. And this evening, we're joined by Ndapanda Andreas-Kayoko, who's the author of a book titled, Hey You Liberator. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I just briefly read into the book, and of course, as you wrote here in your note, I want to read this. It says that this story is a work of fiction. One can only appreciate the art of storytelling for its imaginative ability to tap into feelings and thoughts, often difficult to define or express in everyday life. To each and all, I grant the lens of personal interpretation. To liberators, old and new, I ask, are you listening now? Interesting. You dedicate this book to your husband and your children. Why is that?
Because that's my legacy. Matter of fact, the inspiration for really putting this out was COVID-19 and me getting COVID and thinking, listen, this thing could take me. And asking myself, what could I leave behind for my children? What could I leave behind for my family? And I've always wanted to be a published author. Over the years, I've assisted people with publishing their books, edited them for them, and usually memoirs. So I thought to myself, I need to put my work out there and make sure that I leave a legacy for my family. I didn't die, of course, but we're here now.
You're here to tell the story, to tell the tale.
Yeah.
The synopsis, the brief synopsis at the back, makes me think that this book is tailored towards young people and sort of inspiring the youth, you know, to take up ground, to take up space. Am I correct, or what's your interpretation of it?
You are correct. It is intergenerational, though. It's the youth and the older generation, because that's really where the dialogue takes place. That's where I'm challenging existing tensions between the two groups. But I think the main target group, I would want young people to read this and be triggered, to actually, you know, go after change, pursue change. But at the same time, I would want the older generation to be triggered and actually be willing to listen to the youth, because the youth are speaking. And I was explaining earlier to Denver that these words floating on the cover are representative of how there's so much noise in the attempt to try and elevate your voice. So the title in itself is a shout. So you're trying to shout, but there's so much. And what is the noise around us as young people in Namibia? It's issue of corruption, it's issue of greed, it's issues of just poor leadership, for lack of a better word. And so I felt like it was important to put a work out there that would say, listen, young people want to be heard, but you need to listen outside of this bubble of noise that is trying to drown out their voices.
Can liberator also be substituted for generational curse breaker?
And again, your own lens of interpretation. Liberators can be, and I think within the book, the reader would see that the main characters, despite being youthful, are themselves liberators for their generation. But of course, in the book, there is a political party called the Liberators, and it's quite very direct towards them. But I left it kind of open to the imagination of the reader to interpret for themselves, could I actually be the liberator for my generation? It doesn't even have to be something big. It can be in your specific sphere of influence, where you ask yourself, wherever you see injustice, can I do something to bring about change? That's really the conversation that I'm trying to trigger.
What do you teach your children about injustice and how to approach it, in, of course, in your life, which, you know, I think would play as a part of inspiration to the book as well?
So I have 4 under 10. They're very young.
Oh gosh.
They're very young. So first thing, do not hit back. Try and, you know, have a conversation. But if they insist, hit back. I'm sorry. I'm just like, you're not going to bully my kid, you know, for no reason. But it's very important for me to leave, you know, pieces of work like this for them, to later on, when they're a bit more mature, to really try and get into mommy's mind and thinking and trying to understand, you know, what could my position be as a change maker? Because in as much as I have a background in political science, I'm not in active politics. But for me, this is a form of activism as well. I don't need to be toying in the streets. I don't need to be wearing a particular party color to be elevating my voice. I believe that I could put out a work of literature and actually influence people in their homes, influence people in their social circles by triggering their minds, making them think. And this, Nina, is set in Windhoek, was deliberately set in Windhoek. I drew inspiration from real life events, the fish rot scandal.
Is that for, you know, relatability?
Yes, because I wanted the reader to read and say, I've been to Independence Avenue, I've been to State House, I know about the fish rod scandal. I know these events happened in real life, but then it's like you're bringing a sense of emotion, triggering, appealing to their sense of emotion, and at the same time also making them think to themselves that, could there be more outside of what I'm being presented with in my life?
Right.
Could there be more that I could dig up for? And I thought doing this from a creative perspective would be better, because then again, like I say, you broaden the options for imagination, you broaden the options for imagery, as opposed to limiting it to say, I could have easily written a non-fiction book.
Right.
And then it's taken as a matter of fact, and again, it's my own opinion. But I went for, listen, this is fiction, run with it.
Yeah.
But it's relatable, it has to do with our current context, the realities we're facing as young people. Make do with it what you can.
Yeah. I think it's probably difficult to ask an author what the favorite parts of their work is, and especially because this is like your first baby.
Yeah.
So you love everything about it. But there must be some parts that you love more than the others.
I didn't like the part where I killed off Cuckoo, because I have a soft spot for grannies, but I ended up killing off this character. that shook me even. But I think one of my favorites, maybe it's because I feel like it's very important to advance that sort of dialogue, is where the Prime Minister, who is an antagonist in this particular context, he has an outburst with his son. The son confronts him about why is he the way he is, he's greedy, he's corrupt, and all the works. And so he has an outburst where he explains himself, where he justifies himself, and we see this emotional side of him that we don't associate with greedy politicians.
Right.
We assume they're cold, they don't care, they're here to take all your coins, and that's that. But he has this outburst where we see this empathetic side of him, this human side of him, and that was me trying to say, these are human beings. One, I'm not justifying the corruption, but at the end of the day, it will be interesting to ask what motivates you to get there. What is it about you that where you feel you're the only one that should eat everything and leave no crumbs behind? So there is a part in the book where he has this outburst explaining how, because of the apartheid legacy, it's almost like we must now eat because we've gotten the opportunity and we fought so hard to get this opportunity. Now it's our turn. And it's almost a little bit ignorantly justified, but at the same time, it was useful for the other characters to understand how they can position themselves to actually challenge that mindset. And so that was my favorite part, I would say.
I see the writing bug has really bit you well, because you're busy with Hey You Liberator Part 2, the prologue to Part 2 is in here as well.
Yeah.
Tell us just briefly about that.
So initially I thought, let me put out the whole thing as one book, but then I was like, this is heavy content. This is heavy content. Let me split it in two. Let me put out a teaser, get the conversation started. And again, next year's election year, I strategically planned to launch it now so that we can get the conversation started in terms of youth participation in politics for next year. Because I moderate public discussions and the likes, and it was very fascinating to me to hear young people say they don't feel like anything is going to change in Namibia after the 2024 elections. And I was like, oh my goodness. Now I'm also an electoral observer, and so I've observed elections in quite a few countries, and I have actually seen how young people actively participating has brought about change. So I don't buy into that notion. And so I feel like part 2 will try to demystify that notion that there is something you can do, and I'm going to share some nuggets in part 2.
So part 2 is done and dusted.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm just waiting to sell these books out, and then I'll release the other one.
You self-published this book,
Yeah.
which is no small feat. Talk to us about that, and then why you decided to self-publish as well.
Going with traditional publishing houses, Namibia is quite small. We don't have a lot of established public publishers. And the ones that are there, the contracts are ridiculous, in my opinion. You give over so much copyright of your work. You get 10%, or you get at most maybe 40%. Mind you, a book is it's an asset that you're going to have, that is even going to outlive you. And for as long as it's in circulation, for as long as it's being sold, there's revenue coming in. And if you've given over 90% of copyright for that work of art, that's a loss for yourself, that's a loss for your offspring. And so when I started editing books for people, I would always tell them, listen, self-publish. The market in Namibia is small enough for you to still be able to make enough. And even when it does start to grow, you have ownership of your work. Because we are not at a place where established houses are willing to have sort of realistic contracts, in my opinion. So I decided, listen, since I have my consultancy registered, I can help you to publish it because I know the whole value chain. But at the end of the day, you have 100% copyright of your work. In matter of fact, we part our ways. After I'm done editing, I've helped you print the book, you go do your thing, I go my way. And I feel like that's the future of publishing, because gone are the days where you have to, maybe let me make this point. Traditional publishing is a win. It sounds like a solution in the immediate. From an immediate perspective. For example, you get this deal, you didn't have money, because you didn't have money, so you get this deal, so you think, oh my God, I struck gold. But in the long run, you know, for as long as your book is being sold, the publishers are taking quite a big chunk of it. They're going to make out so much money out of your book. Whilst with self-publishing, in the short run, you actually have to fork out a lot of money. Just the whole process from editing, proofreading, printing, graphic work, the whole works. But in the long run, when you start selling your books, when you have 100% ownership, you get all the coins coming to you. So that's the route I advocate for. That's the route I went for. I'm not even putting my book in bookstores. And again, I have nothing against that. Those are businesses. We're all here to make money. But when I get a contract from Exclusive Books saying I must sell my book to them at half the price, and I must sign this contract saying that if they don't sell my books, I need to refund them their money. I'm like, listen, I can call people, I can do this thing on my own. I don't need to go that route. In an ideal world, you'd want to have a space where your book is easily accessible to people. But then if it means it comes at the cost of me losing out on money, then come on.
Yeah, it's not
worth it. Yeah.
I think you just gave some really good advice to, you know, somebody watching who's also thinking of writing and thought of it as this long, dreary journey, and you know, that there's no way out, so they know that there is an option to be able to do this. Where can we get a hold of Hey You Liberator?
I'm selling from the boot of my car. The books are going for $200. I made them as affordable as possible. So anybody can contact me directly. I'm on Facebook, Ndapanda Andreas-Kayoko. I'm on Instagram, Live with Ndapanda. And then if you just call me, it's 081-3787-155. And then I can deliver it to you.
Fantastic. I can tell you this book is going to be successful because you are motivated and geared and ready for it to be successful. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nina, for having me.
I'm going to enjoy reading this, and I promise you I'm going to put up a review on our Instagram page at the Daily Roundup with Nina. That's on Instagram. That was Ndapanda Andreas-Kayoko speaking to us about her book, Hey You Liberator. Of course, we always advocate that we go out and support our local creatives, our local artists in whichever form that is, whether it's music, you know, writing. Please do support them. And just a little whisper between you and I, Ndapanda smiles amazing. That's all we have for this evening. We're going to end up with a music video by Gaza titled Checker, and of course weather again. Until tomorrow night, from myself and the team, it's good night and thank you for watching.